This first slide does show some of our sponsors and people who have funded this project. One of the questions we got at Cumberland Council tonight was how much does this project cost? And we don't really know. By the time you add up all of the in-kind, discounts, and cash that we put into this, we're probably approaching about $200,000 in 5 years. But that's a lot of volunteer effort as well. So these aren't the only funders. There's lots of people who have been giving really a lot of their time. So, you know, the big question is, why do we need this? The folks in this room probably understand why we need to do this as well as I do. But to protect remaining biodiversity, landscape connectivity, buffer climate change, preparing for increasing population and necessary development, encouraging a coordinated natural systems and regional approach to conservation and land use planning, to ensure the quality of life we all enjoy continues, and to restore lost and fragmented ecosystems. What is the conservation strategy? It's a framework for conservation planning that identifies and protects significant ecological areas and then works towards the linkages and linking them together. Oops. So the 4 areas that emerged in the Nature Without Borders report were riparian areas, sensitive ecosystems, critical watersheds, the Browns and the Sable rivers, and I'll show you those in a moment, and upland wildlife corridors. So this is the total inventory of sensitive ecosystems as of 2004, or up till 2004. This is a compilation of the provincial sensitive ecosystem inventory, sensitive ecosystem and river and wetland mapping that was done by Project Watershed and other community partners in partnership with Project Watershed on the watershed inventory program. So, you know, quite rich amount here, but in 2004, this was all reassessed. It was all looked at again. And this slide shows the yellow was altered in some way, and the black is gone forever. So what we had is now down to this, and most of it is fragmented. So we really do have the green that's left on this slide, and this picture, and this map, is really all that's left of intact ecosystems in the valley. So it's urgent. We are losing that. Now this is 2004. We're already 4 years later. We know there's been more losses since this time. I'm going to take a look now at how the conservation strategy works. What you're looking at now are the currently protected areas. These are parks. This over on this side over here, oops, keep on bumping that and we go to the next slide. This area here, it's not showing up as green right now. There it is Strathcona Park. So of course it goes well off the map, a lot bigger than what's shown here. We've tried to bring this map in just to sort of orient you to this concept that we're promoting. So most of these, particularly in the towns, these are just playing fields, community parks, nice green spaces, and they are spotted all over the place. There's not a lot of interconnection between them. But that's it, folks. That's the sum total of the protection in our valley. So what we're proposing is a 30-meter buffer around all the streams, all the water courses, lakes, creeks, streams, everything. Now this, we are not suggesting is a no-go zone. What we're suggesting is that as long as the proper functioning condition of that water source is maintained or restored, that we can nestle into these areas. So it's much more of a higher standard of development within these areas. So a buffer around all the streams. You can already see that with those buffers, a lot of the green spaces and protected areas are already starting to get linked together. Those are the ecosystems that are in behind there now, just so you can see how those are now linked together by this buffer system. This is the Browns watershed, which is this one here. Let me get my mouse going here. This is the Browns watershed, and this one down here is the Sable. And again, we're not saying this is a no-go zone, but what we're hoping here is a much more large landscape type of protection, where we develop less, if at all, in these areas, where we leave large landscape areas available for biodiversity primarily. Maybe didn't see that. I'll just bring it in again. You see these large swaths on the landscape coming in here now? Those are the upland wildlife corridors. These are conceptual, long-term swaths on the landscape that give planners and land use planners an opportunity over time to create contiguous wild space. We're not suggesting that these need to be 500 meters wide like they appear in this map, but this is the opportunity that planners have, is if they're dealing with a piece of property within one of these corridors, they can then look at the property next to it on both sides and say, well, we're trying to get a wildlife corridor in here over time, so I'm going to ask this landowner to leave a strip of wild along this edge, which will then connect in the future or even in the present to wild area on either side. So these are long-term conceptual opportunities for planners to create contiguous wildlife corridors. These are the most controversial of the proposal. And planners are liking them as a tool that they use, but making these public, if you own a piece of property that's smack dab in one of these, you might get a little worried. So these are not written in stone, these are opportunistic over time. It's kind of a different type of land use scenario. What have we accomplished with all this money and all this time? The Nature Without Borders was published in 2007. When we first put the steering committee together, it was to revise the recommendations, taking them away from prescriptive and turning them into much more outcome-oriented recommendations. And that was then republished in January of this year. The report recommendations, these are specific actions that can be taken by local government, agencies, and individuals for implementing a regional conservation strategy. Conservation and database tools, these are compilations of other initiatives that happened in the past, anything that was ever mentioned by the naturalists or by a streamkeeper group or by an agency, by DFO. These were all compiled together and put into a database. And that's actually turning into that's going to be a long-term tool because it captures that we have one little area, for example, and 5 different agencies or organizations have commented on that. So that gives it a lot of power, that over time there's been several mentions of it. Really, they assist with conservation growth management planning, and they do provide an overview for specific specific land use planning. The establishment of the Comox Valley Conservation Strategy Steering Committee, that's been a wonderful experience for me, and I think all the folks that are there, we've been a group of 12 now for about a year, a little over a year, and I think we're really working well together, but we're going through that same, what you need to go through, terms of reference, and how do we organize this, and who's going to do what, and we're right in the thick of that, and we're really making great gains. One of the most significant accomplishments was a series of workshops that we hosted, we put together and hosted with our planners. The first of those sessions was the first time, in some ways, that all those municipal planners from Comox, Courtenay, Cumberland, and the regional district were brought into the same room to work together. They had met on various occasions, but we were asking them to roll up their sleeves and have a look at a regional approach to this. It was a very good experience for us too. It started out with everybody kind of, there was some trust issues and people weren't speaking freely. By the second workshop, everybody was getting wide open and talking freely. It was quite dramatic. So what then came out of that was we had come up with a kind of series of recommendations that they were then going to take back to their councils. They then contacted us and said, look, we want another session we're going to sit down and we're all going to map out the same set of recommendations. This was suggested by the planners, and at the end of that session we had a basic framework. All of the planners signed on to it, and all of the planners have taken that forward to their councils. So councils all got the same message from their disparate planners. Phenomenal process. These are just some of the groups that are on the steering committee. And we are looking at an expansion of the steering committee. We need to get some more folks involved, certainly some more stakeholders. We're talking about business community, development community, real estate community, for example. How do we turn a report into a living process that will achieve the goals sought? One of the key things that we've done is involve the key local players, particularly the senior planners being advisors to the project. And by developing the strategy in terms of other planning initiatives that are underway. The growth management, regional growth management strategy is just getting underway, and we've kind of come in to kind of underpin this. Over the next few years, next 2 years, as the regional growth strategy is developed, we're hoping that the work we've done here already underpins a conservation ethic within the planning community, and will be used as not only to inform the regional growth strategy, but also to protect what's left while we build it, because we get 2 more years of perhaps a lot of losses. 3 out of 4 as of today. Linda kind of stole my thunder here. Cumberland Council endorsed the Nature Without Borders report and our recommendations at about, I think that should read 5:45 today. Courtney and Comox passed endorsements in the last 2 weeks. Only the regional district to go. We know that the area directors are very much on side, but there's now this regional growth process going on, and what we're asking for, and I think what we're all wanting to do now, is to marry these two and make it very effective. Last thing is this expansion of the steering committee. We have really looked at the structure of our ad hoc organization, and we really are wanting people to come up and either be a partner, which is a big commitment. We actually have now designed what it is to be a partner, and we are asking for a fair commitment, or become a member of one of the implementation teams. We have been referring to these as committees or subcommittees, but I think the term implementation teams really does suit the kind of work that we're doing. So this gives you an opportunity to get involved in this process and really have an influence. I feel quite strongly, as each council passes this and accepts the Nature Without Borders, that we're seeing some history made. And this has been very, very exciting. And by joining us and coming out to our meetings, it gives you an opportunity to have some of that influence as well. So we welcome you aboard. If you want to just indicate that on the sign-out sheet, or give me a call, I can give you my card if you're interested, or if you can give me your card. So we need you, and we'd like you to be involved. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Kind of 2 parts. Do you know what is happening with the old field sawmill property, and are you involved with what may be happening? And if nothing's happening, what is being pursued in terms of the development of that property?
We've left that initiative to the Comox Valley and naturalists. The naturalists are proposing it for a community park, and have made some movement in that direction. I know letters have gone to councils, and we're hearing that recently Gordon Campbell visited our community and was going over the 17th Street Bridge and said, "Oh, that's a real good site for a community park, isn't it?" So there may be some hope there. The Comox Valley Land Trust developed as a part of these tools for the conservation strategy. We have designed a criteria matrix. This is a way that enables us as a board to look at areas or pieces of land that come up. Somebody wants to put a covenant on, or somebody wants us to raise money to buy it. How do we make that determination whether we're going to put that kind of energy into it or not? So we developed this criteria matrix, which on the one axis has the amount of threat that it's under, and on the other axis has the value, environmental value on it. So we can actually place pieces of land in this matrix and make a fairly wise choice where we put our energy and bucks. And the field sawmill scored quite low, partly because it's already surrounded by a lot of green space with farms and farms. And that the soils may be contaminated. We hear that they're not badly contaminated, but it would take a lot of work. Plus, the metal wall that was used for bringing logs up to make the Courtney River more effective, and there is an initiative now to start restoring the Courtney River, primarily because of the seal problem. The angle of repose has to be changed, so there's some big engineering to be done on that piece of property as well. So we've basically are quietly supporting the naturalists, and put on my Solom River hat. We have actually written a letter in support of the naturalists to move forward with as a park. I know that they're asking an exorbitant price for it, for what has to be done to make that land ready for anything, and there's been no nibbles that we've heard of in terms of purchase. Boy, that's easy.
One question is, like the Comox drinking water reference guide, we're going to use like some of that transferable to Port Alberni. Would this Nature Without Borders report be transferable to another community as well?
One of the reasons that the Real Estate Foundation is so interested in our project is that they believe it's a template for other communities in BC. You could visit our website, cvlandtrust.org. The report's there, the maps are there, and feel free to call me anytime if you have questions. Gerard, you got a question?
Thanks, Jack. Gerard Levon on the steering committee. Unfortunately, couldn't make it to today's meeting, but a couple of things in response to the last question. I'm a contractor with Ducks Unlimited on something called the Green Bylaws Toolkit, and the Nature Without Borders report is one of our case studies that we present, or that I present in my work up and down the island, from Port Hardy to Victoria and over to the upper and lower Sunshine Coast. So it is well advertised and people are very interested in it. I've got about a request for about 15 copies of the report right now, so David, I'm going to need a few more. The other thing is, tomorrow evening there's a meeting on the regional growth strategy to outline the process. That's going to be followed by the Comox Valley Regional District. It might be interesting to have a question posed. Why is the regional district so late in putting forward the recommendations that the three councils have been putting forward as well? It's critical to the planning of this valley, and it's very important in terms of the future that we're facing. So if any of you are coming to that meeting tomorrow night, you might want to query as to why this has not been before the board yet.
If I can add just a little bit of that, a bit to that, when we first presented the Nature Without Borders report and our recommendations, and before we met with the planners, once the planners had put their reports in, one of the things that we asked for was to report back to council by June 15th. And all the other councils really tried hard. The only reason that we were a week late with Cumberland was that their last meeting was, they already had like 8 delegations, so they just couldn't get another one squeezed in. But we got that done today. And it's a very good question. Why is that? Why have we been delayed? And why the commitment to come back by June 15th wasn't carried forward. So I can't be at that meeting tomorrow, so I hope that some of you can take that question forward.
Doug, is it true that a lot of the planning departments locally do not have environmental planners on the staff, or people with that kind of environmental sort of planning background, that this is very helpful for them because they are lacking them in their own departments? This is really good guidance for them.
That's kind of what we're hearing in the absence and vacuum of no environmental planners in the valley. We've done a pile of work that they basically just take and go with. We see that as a real lacking. It's something that comes up in conversation at the Land Trust all the time. perhaps on the steering committee to a certain extent, is that there really needs to be some kind of, we were even thinking of an itinerant planner. Now that we've got these guys thinking regionally, perhaps they could jointly hire one person, affordable for all of them, that could be an itinerant environmental planner. And that's something that maybe we're going to be talking about as well. Yes?
Do you have a hard copy of that here, just to have a look at, see what, how heavy is it?
It's not heavy. It's actually a good little read. It's actually not as, it's got some technical parts, but it's actually a good read. It's kind of inspirational. It's just a very small booklet.
Get it off.
But I don't have one. I had one which I gave away already. Maybe do you have any?
I don't. I gave my, so give me your name, anyone
I've
who wants
got,
a copy, see me, and I will get one to you.
Yeah, I've got
It's also on, it is online, if you don't mind reading stuff online. Save on some paper.
There's one right behind you, Faye. There's,
Here's, oh, here, okay, could we just look at it?
Yeah, I'll print it off.
and we'll mail you one, Faye, and you don't have to, print it out.
Wonderful.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming. It's been my pleasure to share this with you.